Eggs or oatmeal? You pick one every morning, probably without thinking too hard about it. And you assume you're making a solid call either way. Both have a good reputation. Both have science behind them. But here's the part most people skip right over. They work through completely different biological mechanisms, and depending on what your body actually needs in the morning, one of them could be quietly working against you. Most people frame this as a simple contest: healthy carbs versus protein, clean eating versus keto adjacent. And most people have already picked a side before they even crack an egg or open a canister of oats. But the real answer isn't about which food sounds healthier. It's about which mechanism matters most to you, and whether the version of that food you're actually eating is doing what you think it's doing. Today we are looking strictly at physiology and clinical research, not diet trends, not personal preference. We are going head-to-head on the criteria that actually determine your morning hunger hormone suppression, protein quality, fiber and gut mechanics, glucose and insulin behavior, cholesterol impact, and the preparation factor that can flip the entire verdict. By the end, you will know exactly which breakfast fits your specific biology and why your current version of either one might be undermining you without you realizing it. Let's get into it. And we're starting where the biology hits first, before lunch, before your afternoon slump, before any of that. We're starting with the hunger signal itself. Ghrelin is the hunger signal your stomach fires at your brain. Think of it like a timer running in the background. It climbs before meals, peaks when you're genuinely hungry, and drops after you eat. The question isn't just whether it drops, it's how far it drops and how long it stays down. A randomized study put this directly to the test. Participants ate a 2-egg breakfast on some days and an oatmeal breakfast on others, and researchers measured plasma ghrelin levels directly in the blood. The egg breakfast produced lower ghrelin levels, not just right after eating. The satiety advantage showed up specifically before dinner, hours later, across most of the waking day. One breakfast choice and your hunger signal stayed suppressed well into the evening. That's not a small finding. That's your body's alarm system being quieted for most of the day by what you ate in the morning. Oatmeal didn't produce the same effect on ghrelin, and the reason comes down to what each food is actually made of. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient per calorie, more than fat, more than carbohydrate, and not just any protein counts equally. What matters is amino acid completeness and how efficiently your body can actually absorb and use what you ate. Eggs score exceptionally high on both counts. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, the ones your body cannot build on its own. And the protein in eggs has one of the highest digestibility ratings of any whole food. 2 eggs give you roughly 12 to 13 grams of complete, highly usable protein. Oatmeal has protein too, about 5 to 6 grams in a standard serving, but it is not a complete protein. It is low in lysine, one of those 9 essential amino acids your body needs and cannot make. That gap rarely comes up in conversations about oatmeal being healthy, because the overall image of oatmeal is so positive that the details get glossed over. The gap is real though, and it is structurally meaningful for satiety. Here is the important thing. Adding a protein source to oatmeal can close most of that gap. Plain Greek yogurt stirred in, a handful of nuts, even a side egg. The oatmeal platform is not broken. It just doesn't arrive complete on its own. Oatmeal's satiety case, though, doesn't rest on protein. It rests on something entirely different, and this is where it earns genuine respect. Beta-glucan is a soluble fiber found in oats. When it hits water in your gut, it forms a thick, viscous gel. Picture the inside of your stomach and small intestine as a processing line. Normally, food moves through at a certain pace, getting broken down and absorbed as it goes. Beta-glucan physically slows that line down. It coats the contents of your gut in a gel that makes gastric emptying, the rate at which your stomach pushes food into the small intestine, significantly slower. Slower gastric emptying means the satiety signals your gut sends to your brain last longer. It's not hormonal the way protein is. It's mechanical. Oatmeal is physically dragging the brakes on your digestive system, and that extended process keeps fullness signals active well past the meal. That is a completely different mechanism from what eggs are doing. Eggs pull down a hunger hormone. Oatmeal slows the machinery. Both produce satiety through entirely different biological levers. The catch is that this only works if the beta-glucan is intact. Processing damages fiber structure. Heavily processed oats, particularly instant packets, have had a lot of that structural integrity compromised before you even open the package. And that matters because it takes us directly into glucose. Eggs contain almost no carbohydrates, 0.5 gram per egg, maybe 1 gram at most. That means the glucose signal after an egg breakfast is minimal. Your blood sugar barely moves. Your insulin response is small. And when blood sugar stays flat, you don't get the drop that drives early hunger. Oatmeal is a different story, and the story changes entirely based on what kind of oatmeal you're eating. Minimally processed oats, the kind where the beta-glucan is intact, have a moderate glycemic index of around 55. That means blood sugar rises, but gradually, and the fiber slows absorption enough to prevent a steep spike. The body handles it reasonably. A large postprandial glucose rise followed by a sharp drop is what drives that mid-morning crash and the return of hunger before lunch. Intact oatmeal, prepared minimally, avoids the worst of that. But instant oatmeal, flavored packets, sweetened varieties, those behave like a completely different food metabolically. The glycemic index climbs substantially. The beta-glucan benefit is reduced. And the added sugar on top of already processed oats can push blood glucose high enough to produce exactly the kind of spike and drop that sends you to the kitchen 2 hours later. People call both of these things oatmeal. They are not the same breakfast. Now we get to the part that stopped a lot of people in their tracks for decades. Eggs and cholesterol. Each large egg contains roughly 185 to 200 milligrams of dietary cholesterol, and it is all in the yolk. For years, conventional guidance treated that number as a cardiovascular threat. The logic seems straightforward. Eat cholesterol, raise blood cholesterol, raise heart risk. Cut the yolks. The actual relationship is more complicated. Saturated fat and trans fat have a significantly larger impact on blood LDL levels for most people than dietary cholesterol does. The body also tightly regulates cholesterol production in the liver, adjusting its own output based on how much you consume. The one-to-one assumption, eat more cholesterol and blood cholesterol rises proportionally, doesn't hold for most people. The same randomized study that measured ghrelin also tracked lipid markers, specifically the LDL-to-HDL ratio, which researchers use as a composite marker of cardiovascular risk because it captures both the harmful fraction and the protective fraction together. The egg breakfast did not worsen the ratio compared to the oatmeal breakfast. Not a marginal difference. The ratio was maintained. LDL is the lipoprotein associated with cardiovascular risk. HDL is associated with protection, clearing cholesterol from the arteries and returning it to the liver. A lower ratio of LDL to HDL is what you want. Eggs, in this study, did not shift that ratio in the wrong direction. That finding directly contradicts the message many people absorbed for years. One important nuance. A subset of people are cholesterol hyperresponders. Their LDL does rise meaningfully with dietary cholesterol intake. This is genetically driven, and those people exist. The finding does not apply universally, but for the majority of people, the old fear about eggs and heart disease was built on a framework that the research has substantially revised. Now, all of that, the ghrelin data, the protein quality, the beta-glucan, the glucose curve, the cholesterol research, every bit of it assumes you are eating the base food in its cleanest form. And here is where the real-world picture gets uncomfortable. The most popular version of oatmeal in most households is not plain rolled oats cooked in water. It's a flavored instant packet, often with added sugar, dried fruit coatings, and flavoring agents. That version loses most of the beta-glucan benefit because processing has already compromised the fiber structure. The glucose behavior is no longer moderate. The cardiovascular and satiety advantages of oatmeal are built on minimally processed oats. The packet on your shelf may not qualify. And eggs are not immune to this problem. The most common egg breakfast doesn't look like 2 poached eggs on a plate. It looks like eggs scrambled next to bacon or sausage, cooked in butter, maybe with cheese. Processed breakfast meats add substantial saturated fat and sodium. Saturated fat is exactly the thing that does move LDL in the wrong direction for most people. The cholesterol neutral finding from the research applies to eggs. It does not apply to eggs plus processed meat plus full-fat dairy, eaten together as one meal. So, the popular version of the oatmeal breakfast and the popular version of the egg breakfast are both, in their most common real-world form, the worst iteration of each food. Neither one is eating at its biological potential. The base food has the science. The add-ons are quietly reversing it. You came in thinking this was a simple fight between healthy carbs and protein. It isn't. Eggs and oatmeal pull on different levers inside you. Eggs press down on hunger with complete protein and a strong ghrelin drop. Oatmeal slows the gut with beta-glucan and can steady the morning when it's the plain, minimally processed kind. The real winner is not the food on the label. It is the version in your bowl and the job you need that breakfast to do. If hunger hits again 2 hours after you eat, protein is probably the weak link. That is where eggs can make a real difference, especially if your old breakfast was mostly fast carbs with not much staying power. If you care more about a slower energy curve or a heart marker like the LDL-to-HDL ratio, plain oatmeal with something added for protein is the smarter move. And if you load either one with sugar, syrup, or processed meats, you can wreck the biology fast. The base food matters. The add-ons can flip the result. Drop a comment with the part that changed your mind most, the ghrelin finding, or the LDL-to-HDL result. And if you want the next breakdown, what happens to hunger, blood sugar, and muscle when you skip breakfast entirely, that one is coming next. Subscribe so the next one lands in your feed. That is the real lesson here. Your body does not care about food tribes or old diet slogans. It cares about signals, speed, and what happens after the first bite. Feed the morning with the right mechanism, and the day feels different. Look back at those 2 plates now. Same morning, same goal. But one is a quiet protein signal, and the other is a slow fiber break. Once you can see that, breakfast stops being a guess.